Yes, it's a stretch, but hear me out. Here's my idea for what could happen with the lore if Mumbo Jumbo, the redstone king of YouTube, joined the Dream SMP. Believe me, this gets pretty crazy. Also, I'd really appreciate it if you help me make the funny numbers go brrr and subscribe, so thanks for that. Okay, so I know what you're thinking. You've barely even made it to this point in the video because, let's be honest here, Mumbo on the Dream SMP, that's never happening. He isn't even an MCC. What on earth could Annie have to offer about this? Well, thanks for having faith, because this all starts with Mumbo's backstory, how he was introduced to the plot. Close your eyes for a second and imagine this. Wilbur Soot stuck in limbo, having examined and memorized every inch, every square centimeter of his personal hell. No new people, no new feelings, no new information, nothing. For 13 years. 13 years of complete and utter stagnation, no change in sight. Wilbur's mind was hungry, starved of any new stimuli, and thus it was a sponge for everything new he felt, saw, and learned from the moment he heard that distant train whistle. As the train chugged into the station, Wilbur reveled in the sheer newness of it all. The change, the difference, the break in the incessant monotony that he could not escape. Boarding the train the instant the doors opened, he was reassured as his foot landed on something solid, and he grinned to himself quietly as he took a seat, comfortably settling down on the padded berths, which were a welcome break from the hard wooden benches of the platform. And he watched as his limbo finally started to pull away from him, the platform finally disappearing from his sight, forever ingrained into his memory, replaced by a deep expanse of pure void. Leaning into the aisle, Will can see a green figure in the conductor's seat, driving the train that saved him. A less shrewd Wilbur might have called him heroic, have felt some gratitude towards Dream for rescuing him from limbo. Wilbur knew better than that. Dream's actions couldn't be anything but selfish. There was an ulterior motive behind them, and Wilbur was going to unmask it sooner or later. A piercing light from the outside interrupted Wilbur's train of thought. A dry chuckle escaped from his mouth, the unanticipated pun, and Wilbur saw a white castle filled to the brim with identical people set on top of a cloud in the distance. Casting a glance to the windows on the other side of the train, Wilbur could see a group of people, all of varying colors and demeanors, idly tinkering with blocks and floating around somehow. A large group of what seemed to be redstone lamps hung in the air, and a man in a suit, seeing Wilbur inside the train, hastily flicked on a lever, causing a single word to run across the lamps. Newspaper, whatever that means. Looking around, Wilbur saw a newspaper tucked into the holder near a carriage door, and delighting internally at the wonderful instability of the train beneath his feet, a stark contrast to the rigid and solid platform, he strolled to the door and slid the newspaper from the holder. The text is written in a language Wilbur can't read, interspersed by pictures that seem to be both from a hyper-modern future and an ancient past, and plastered on top of it is a sloppily sellotaped advertisement. Redstoner for hire, it reads, followed by a weird schematic of what appears to be a communication device. Wilbur, hungry for knowledge, memorized the schematic, noting the weird mustache logo at the bottom of the flyer. Nothing more comes of the train trip, with Wilbur continuing to scheme, plot, and plan. Dream was his linchpin, Wilbur realized. With Dream's power, Wilbur could accomplish everything he wanted. He could finally control both the narrative and the actual story at once. The combination of the two factors, which he had only ever wielded individually, would give him ultimate power, he was sure of it. The only problem that was left to be solved was Dream. Wilbur had to ensure that his manipulation of Dream was subtle, underhand, and made the man feel that he was the one controlling Wilbur. Wilbur would have to act grateful. He would have to convince everyone that he had nothing but admiration for Dream. And thus, Wilbur disembarked from the train, gently stepping onto what seemed to be an altar, the newspaper gently rustling in his pocket. A lock of his hair brushed against the train as he looked around in sight, taking it all in one last time. And as if he could sense the death he had just escaped, the hair turned deathly pale. Fitting, Wilbur thought. The sky was cold above him as he plotted, and before long he could hear Tommy's familiar screeches in the distance. A slight smile spread across his face before its face wiped itself clean, feigning mock amazement, ready for Tommy to discover him. The plan was going well at first, with Tommy and Ranbu, who was new to Wilbur and quite clearly easy to manipulate, both spreading the lie that he felt indebted to Dream. The only problem that remained was Dream's incarceration. The man who meant little more than physical power to Wilbur was, well, powerless while stuck in prison, and thus Wilbur constructed the machine he had seen in the flyer, making sure to include the carefully packaged ender pearl that he had found when returning the newspaper to the holder. He trickled out the blood-red liquid which he had got from mining, and it quickly dried into a dust that seemed to hum with energy. A flick of a lever here, a button pressed there, and... Hello! The name's Mumbo. I assume this is from the newspaper if I'm not mistaken? I can't believe that's work first time, honestly. I'm chuffed to bits with that ski. Wilbur looked at Mumbo, cutting him off. You know redstone, yes? I want to utilize your services as soon as possible. Name your price. Price? Oh, of course. I don't really want anything, honestly. You see, we're actually in between seasons now, and we can't carry stuff over into the new one anyway. We tried sending ourselves diamond blocks last season, which would have been great. Wilbur cut the man off again. Clearly, he liked to talk. You'll work for free. Excellent. Listen to me very carefully. Wilbur described in detail his predicament, making sure to twist the narrative as he did best, glossing over his worst moments and emphasizing his finest ones, carefully crafting his story so that Mumbo would follow him and him alone. The poor inventor had never been one for words, nor the nuanced feelings that Wilbur had come to master, instead embracing the rigid, technical and convoluted rules of redstone till there was not a feat he couldn't perform with the correct tools and resources. The plan was anything but simple, and started with a bait and switch. There was one main flaw in the prison that Wilbur had identified, one flaw that Wilbur would use to his advantage and leverage to crack open Pandora's vault. There was only one guard. Wilbur, ever observant, had noticed that Sam rarely took breaks from guarding the prison, and the only things that could draw the creeper from his post were his need for around an hour of sleep a day, and when he moonlit as an alter ego near Tommy's hotel. The prison was completely inaccessible while Sam slept, but while Sam is the alter ego, Sam Nook, Wilbur had heard Tommy call him once, was helping construct a hotel. The prison could, theoretically, be broken into. The rest of Phase 1 went swimmingly. Wilbur subtly convinced Ranbu into giving up his armor, pickaxe and some milk, in the name of the greater good, saying that helping the newly revived and penniless Wilbur get some basic gear would make the server more peaceful. He chuckled at the thought as he handed Mumbo, whose arrival was still a secret, the items later, and told him to head towards the prison and try to backdoor the system. After a quick pit stop to pick up leather of all things, Wilbur really didn't understand redstone, Wilbur snuck off to Tommy's hotel with a few sticks of dynamite stashed in his inventory. On hearing the distant explosion, Sam scrambled to his feet, exiting his prison just in time to see the hotel crumbling to the ground, a devastated Tommy standing where the entrance had been. He had clearly been arguing with Jack Manifold about something, but it was clear that the hotel had been Tommy's greatest achievement on the server. It had been a monument to how he had rebuilt himself after his exile, and now it was gone. Without a second thought, Sam donned the hard hat he kept onto the guard's desk and rushed to the hotel dig site, giving Tommy instructions and letting him work through his grief before it really had a chance to hit him. Meanwhile, Wilbur was snickering at his old naivete from a nearby hill. He had thought that Tommy, this dumb, fragile child, that Tommy could be his right-hand man. What an absurd idea. Either way, he had to keep Sam occupied for as long as possible, and wiping his face clean of the satisfaction the explosion had brought him, Wilbur joined Tommy in conversation as he collected wood, making the child falter and pushing him closer and closer to giving up, closer and closer to making him burn all of his progress and start over, closer and closer to having Sam Nook wait that much longer. Mumbo, on the other hand, had got into the prison right after Sam had rushed out, forgetting to close the portal behind him in his haste. On the inside, the mustachioed maestro set about doing two things. One, installing a second set of keycards to act as the backdoor into the warden's system. This meant that now, with Mumbo's keycards, anyone could take Sam's route into the prison at any point and access the cell, the lockers, and more at the flick of a lever. Making sure to memorize the arrangement of switches, Mumbo also tinkered with one more thing. The thing that Mumbo Jumbo knew best. The vault door, the piston door. With Mumbo's new keycard, it was possible to trap the person in the warden's pathway inside the walls of the prison, using some honey blocks and ice. To break out, the prisoner would have to somehow disable the lava surrounding the main prisoner's cell, and then would be forced to break the walls of the main prisoner, Dream's, cell. In essence, if Sam tried to escape from the fiendishly clever trap that Mumbo had laid, he would accomplish Wilbur's goal for him and free Dream in the process of escaping. That's splendid. That goes there and done. Alright, this would have been much easier with the create mod, but hey, it functions. It may not be the pretty—
Hello?
A voice emanating from inside the main cell cut Mumbo's subconscious muttering short, and he hastily finished his last bits of redstone before running back to the base as quickly as he possibly could, scared stiff at the idea of being ratted out by the prisoner. The groundwork was set, the trap was laid, and now all that was left was for their plans to come to fruition. Sam had called out Wilbur while the hotel was being rebuilt, correctly noticing that he was doing little except hamper Tommy's progress. Internally delighted, Wilbur feigned feeling extremely insulted by the allegation and left the scene muttering to himself just loud enough to make Sam feel guilty. This guilt, this compassion, the emotions Wilbur had always been able to anticipate and create and control in others, Wilbur used that compassion and convinced Sam to let him visit Dream in prison later, saying that he wanted to see the place where he'd been revived. Racked with guilt and wanting to make up with Wilbur, who he believed had truly changed, Sam let Wilbur enter the prison. He was still hesitant as he had heard rumors from Tommy and Ranboo of his desire to free Dream from prison, but he couldn't bring himself to call Wilbur out again, not while he was trying to make up for doing exactly that. Seeing Wilbur sign his name with a flourish on the entry form gave Sam a little hope. Maybe Wilbur had changed, but in reality, Wilbur would have signed anything. Declaration of Independence, verbally agreed coalitions that fell apart weeks later, words and ink. Used in this manner, used as weakly as Sam used them, as Wilbur had used them in the past, they meant nothing. The visit commenced, and just as planned, as Sam reached the vault door and went to open it, honey blocks dragged Sam halfway across the prison until he was stuck right above Dream's cell. Not much time was left before Sam would manage to alert the others on the SMP and call for backup, so Wilbur darted through the prison and disabled both the lava and the netherite barrier of Dream's cage, leaving the prisoner bewildered at first, and then, for the first time in forever, hopeful. Blocks dropped down from the chute where Wilbur received his potatoes, and bridging across the lava, he finally escaped. Wilbur made sure to act like he was returning a favor, and even patting the prisoner on the back, the duo ran out of the prison, blowing up the entry portal behind them to deter Sam even further. With the amount of chaos that they had caused, and that Wilbur planned to cause with the power and redstone prowess that were practically his thanks to his manipulative skills, they would need the biggest head start that they could get. And that's just my theory on what could happen if Mumbo Jumbo joined the Dream SMP. I'll make part 2 of this video if it hits 15,000 likes, and if you want to help out the channel, consider checking out this original Dream SMP song that I posted a few days ago. Subscribe!